Okay, then I think we are ready and sufficiently complete to start the third session of the PPD10 dialogue series. Today, leveraging DRR to develop more affordable agriculture insurance. My name is Alexander Jäger, and I have the pleasure to be your host this afternoon or this morning. I'm a senior advisor on insurance projects at GIZ headquarters. And I'm actually really delighted to be moderating this session today because agriculture insurance is what I do on a daily basis most of the time. So I'm supporting agriculture insurance projects. And in parallel, we're also doing research on latest developments of agriculture insurance. So for me, this is very much a comfortable and very interesting area. Before we start the session, I would like to actually ask Mr. Hasnat Ahmad, the director of the Insurance and Security and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, and also the chairman of the MEFIN Regional Steering Committee, to provide a welcome message. Mr. Ahmad, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome to the second day of the 10th edition of the MEFIN Public-Private Dialogue, which we are holding by way of a series of webinars with the theme Cutting Climate and Disaster Risk Insurance Cost via Risk Reduction. Through this dialogue, MEFIN hopes to contribute to the identification of ways to ensure that advancements in disaster risk reduction would reflect in more affordable CDRI products. Yesterday, we had two webinar sessions which highlighted how disaster risk reduction lowers both risks and costs, and how risk reduction makes climate and disaster risk insurance more affordable from the perspective of insurers and regulators. For today, we will have session 3 and session 4. Session 3 will explore how disaster risk reduction can leverage for the development of more affordable agriculture insurance products, while session 4 shall examine how disaster risk reduction can be used to develop climate and disaster risk insurance and business interruption insurance for micro, small, and medium enterprises. For the two sessions today, 5 resource speakers who will continue to help us explore how DRR can reduce risk exposures and how it can make insurance more affordable for farmers and SMEs. May all stakeholders benefit in one way or another way from this PPD10 webinar series. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad, for those very kind and warm words opening the session. And now let me briefly introduce you to the agenda of the session. As we all know, the context and reasoning for the session is that climate change makes our weather events and weather patterns more and more unpredictable. But so is the harvest for farmers all around the world. Due to this, agriculture insurance is gaining a foothold also in many Asian countries and helping farmers to become more resilient to climate-related disasters and extreme weather events, such as droughts, floods, or typhoons. In this session, we want to examine how disaster risk insurance and agriculture insurance in general could result in more affordable and efficient agricultural insurance safeguards. Let me now introduce our 3 speakers. The first speaker will be Dr. Stefan Bass, Strategic Advisor on Resilience at the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. He will set a scene by presenting the results of a multi-country study that examines how disaster risk reduction in agriculture has proven to be economically effective. and we will discuss how this relates to insurance. Then 2 presentations from the insurance industry will give a brief introduction on the question how agriculture insurance products currently consider DRR measures in pricing of insurance premiums. Firstly, it will be Mr. Jakub Nugraha, head of the microinsurance department at Asuransi Central Asia from Indonesia. And then this will be followed by Mr. Hang Huan Yue, Deputy Manager of Professional Division in charge of agriculture insurance at Bao Viet Insurance Corporation from Vietnam. I will close this brief introduction by just pointing out 3 guidelines for the session in general. So as always, please turn off your microphone and your webcam to conserve internet bandwidth. Secondly, if you have any question, please post them in the chat next to your next to the presentation, and I can pick them up then during the Q&A session. And last but not least, all the slides will be shared after the webinar via email, so you don't have to take too many notes. Now, with having said this, I think, Dr. Baas, the floor is yours, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this interesting event and this session specifically. I assume as speaker I can leave the webcam on. Huh? I will do that. Yeah. So I'm as already Alexander kindly introduced. I'm going to present you some of the results of a multi-year, multi-country study we did to understand the avoided losses which can be created by applying disaster risk reduction good practice at farm level. So that is very complementary to insurance, and I think we will discuss that in later on in the session. I'm using these 10 minutes, which is very short, to present a huge study, which is a rather complex, more to give the very big picture and to raise your interest to possibly look into the study and read it, because you will find all the details there. Could I get the slides, please? Yeah, so we call the study, we call it multiple benefits, no regrets. And this is about cost-effective solutions to reduce the negative impacts of disasters on agriculture and food security. Next slide, please. I just want to start a bit wider, because I understand this is the first session in the event to focus or to zoom into agriculture. And just to give a little bit of background why agriculture in this respect is so important. And the first message is there, of course, that resilience of agriculture livelihoods is key to making sustainable development a reality by ensuring that agriculture and food systems are productive, sustainable, and risk sensitive. We are talking about a huge number of people worldwide, particularly smallholders. About 2.5 billion people worldwide depend on agriculture for their livelihoods, and including the food systems. And disasters destroy livelihoods, reduce food production, and increase hunger. And those people, which is also important, dependent on agriculture, are not only victims of disasters, but integral to addressing the risk. That is very important, not to think only we have to help them to respond, to react. If we help them, and this is what this study is about, if we help them to put more resilient farming systems or practices in place, the damage and loss can be significantly reduced. Agriculture also plays a critical role in ensuring that affected people after disasters maintain access to food and livelihoods. Next slide, please. Yeah, I just want to highlight the magnitude of overall global impacts on agriculture. This is a slide from the report 2017. Yesterday, we had the official launch of the 2021 report, which we updated all these figures. I couldn't include it into this presentation because it was embargoed till yesterday, because this was a high-level event with our Director General participating and Ms. Mami Mitsutori, the head of UN DRR. and so we couldn't use it. But I can update these figures for you right now verbally. So in the period 2006 to 16, we analyzed all PDNAs which were conducted in developing and low mid-income countries, and we found that overall 23% of all damage and loss was absorbed by agriculture. Damage is the direct impact on assets and loss and destruction on agriculture, and loss includes then the economic flow over a while, because of course if you lose your cow, it's not only the value of the cow, it's also the value of the milk, which may be lost during the whole season or until it can be replaced. So with the report we launched yesterday, we could update those figures for the period 2008 to 18, and there the figure was 26% absorbed by agriculture, which highlights how important agriculture is and how important also risk transfer mechanisms and insurance would be to help somehow cope with this huge impact on agriculture. And the figure below, drought, is specifically devastating for agriculture. We found that in the 2008 to 18 period, it was at 82% of the impacts of drought were absorbed by the agriculture sector. And the impact only on crop and livestock losses was $37 billion in that period in those countries which were facing the disasters. So this as the background why this is so important. Next slide, please. So now to the study itself. It was a multi-year study, as I said, and we were collecting primary data on fields, of farmers' fields, on over more than 900 small-scale farms in 10 countries. And we're analyzing in that context 36 good DRR practices in crops, livestock, fisheries, and aquaculture sectors. And this, as this was a real case scenario, we always had a testing or trial situation where we were comparing what farmers used traditionally or previously, and we introduced selected what we considered, or extension workers considered, DRR good practices, which have specific characteristics to buffer impacts of extreme events. The hazards we addressed were dry spells, drought, flood, cold waves, strong winds, and plant pest diseases and animal diseases. You see the study and the web link on the right side, and I really would encourage you to read the full report, which is very rich indeed. Next slide, please. This is just very quickly to show we were actually on all continents trying to get it. Philippines was one among them, to get a wide picture and to address different farming systems to come up with the first broad picture. But it was a cumbersome study, I can also tell you, because when you do this on the ground, not by modeling, you don't know whether the season will be a hazard season or not. So not all seasons turn actually into what we would qualify as a disaster, or at least as a threatened or risk season. So we had to run it over several years, but it gave the opportunity to compare hazard and non-hazard years or seasons as well. Next slide, please. This was the analytical framework, which I think is very important to understand. So we started from the baseline, which is the previously used practice on a certain farm. And there are two scenarios, the no hazard or the impact of hazards. And our hypothesis was that if we want to succeed to promote disaster risk reduction good practice, they have to perform equally well in normal conditions, because as I said before, not every season turns into a hazard season. So if we try to convince small-scale farmers to change their production or their farming system, that is a very difficult task, and for them a big risk. So if we do it, we must be sure that also in a non-hazard season, these technologies perform equally good. But what we wanted to see that if a hazard strikes, and of course we are looking for hazard-specific DRR good practices, then the benefit by using this new practice must economically pay off. Next slide, please. So it was data collection in the methodology before selecting already from existing sustainable agriculture practices, some which very context specific have the potential to buffer impacts of either drought or flood or whatsoever is most at risk in the places where we did the study. And we had this field appraisal with a local level data collection 4 times throughout the season, with extension workers and farmers working together to collect the data systematically and systemic. And finally, we did an upscaling analysis because we want to see what potential would those practices have if we move out of the research island and give it scope for larger scale application. The assessment criteria for what a good agricultural practice is, I don't go very deep into detail here, but first it's the agroecological suitability. It has to fit where it is supposed to be applied. Also has to have socio-economic feasibility, not create far more work or longer ways to work or more water to fetch, etc. for the women. It has to increase hazard-specific resilience, and it should have, and we looked at the environmental co-benefits. Next slide, please. So I start with the key findings, and then I give you 2 or 3 examples. The key findings of the study were that on average, this is a very rough average, but this is kind of the figures we were looking for. The DRR good practices analyzed in this study generated benefits 2.2 times higher than practices previously used by farmers under hazard conditions. And when we used a cost-benefit analysis, and the average cost-benefit ratio of all across the board of these 36 practices, 900 farms tested, was 3.7 in hazard case and 4.5 in non-hazard cases. So the performance in terms of cost benefits, benefit-cost ratio was that for each dollar invested in hazard conditions, they got $3.7 out in hazard case or $4.5 in non-hazard case. So these were all, we could call them all no regret measures because of the careful pre-selection. We had only one practice which was assumed to be qualifying as this good practice against the 4 criteria, which at the end we couldn't keep as a good practice or a recommendable practice. Especially useful in avoiding or reducing damage and loss from high to medium frequency events which occur with low or medium intensity. I think that's a very important finding from this study when we talk disaster risk reduction. Those technology we test, they will not withstand the Hurricane Ivan or the hurricane or the storm that hit Bicol and the regions in Philippines. Haiyan was the name. So these category 5 events, we should not tell farmers or anybody else that by using DRR level field good practices, there will be no impacts. That would be lying. But on these many small scale dry spells, a medium-sized floods, in that case, they really help to avoid losses. And also interesting was that most of the field level DRR practices brought considerable social and environmental co-benefits. And the good practices that is also important. They remain highly context and location specific. Not everything fits everywhere. A technology which fits in the uplands may be exactly the wrong in the lowlands because of different soils, different water regime. So these context specificities, they have to be assessed before, and they have to be assessed with the communities or farmers to select the right things. Otherwise, there is no, we may recommend a good practice which for that specific place may not be. and we need to further assess upscaling potentials. Next slide, please, just to show you the way we analyzed. This is the example from the Philippines, where we were testing with about 200 farmers new varieties of what they call a green super rice, which we got from the field rice, the seeds, and could test it during the release stage before it was actually officially released in the Philippines. And based on the success of the studies, they were actually included later on in the rice commodity program of the Department of Agriculture. But what were we looking at? First, we were looking at the BCR, the benefit cost ratio, and you see in non-hazard conditions on the left and in hazard conditions on the right, because we were monitoring 5 seasons there. So you can see the figures of the cost benefit. Of the green is the new technology, the red is the old one, and there we could analyze the cost benefits ratio of the two different and compare of the two different technologies in the dry season and the wet season. I'm finished in a second, okay? And also under hazard conditions, and you can see here that there are quite big differences also in terms if we accumulate this over 11 years in the cumulative net returns over 11 years, then it really turns into money for those farmers. Next slide, please. We calculated then that in terms of upscaling, if that were upscaled in Bicol region only, the potential avoided disaster loss between an estimated 33 and 129 million US dollar per season, different depending on the intensity and frequency of the hazard. But that is substantial, and that should be an incentive for both insurance as well as for the government to support the upscaling. Sorry, I need to move quickly. I have included into the presentation. Next slide, please. 2 more examples, which I don't want to go in detail into it. I think you need to click another time here. In Bolivia, cattle raising, you also see 109% difference between previously and newly introduced technology, with also a very high cumulative net benefit for the farmers if calculated over longer period. Next slide. Click several times. Now here you can see but you can have a look at it later. You can see the criteria which we were testing as part of the cost benefit analysis. Next slide. That was Uganda, that a banana cultivation with mulching, counter trenching, and organic composting. So a combination of different technologies, which had the biggest impacts. That was 886% higher than what they did before. But that is, one has also to say, because the baseline, the technology was simply not very sophisticated. If you are in other countries like Philippines or also Germany, where the resilience level and the practices are already at a higher level, then the ratio could not be as high. Final slide, please. And sorry, I'm taking so long. And what we see, if we summarize it, in order to enhance resilience, there's a number of key factors that have to be in there. Not only the farm level good practice, also the enabling policy environment, the climate and weather, and the early warning information, risk vulnerability assessment, services, partnerships, and one is the risk transfer. And I think we need to talk later about incentives or conditionalities, how insurance could use these kind of DRR good practices to particularly promote or provide insurance packages for those technologies and pay them out possibly early on, so that farmers could use the money in case of a hazard. So I stop here, and otherwise I take too much time. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm ready for questions. Thank you.
Great. Dr. Bast, thank you so much for your presentation. I think that very well set the frame of what are the risks that farmers are facing and what's the problem, and also the value of good agricultural practices, no? That then form the base for any good insurance solution or finance solution. I would save the questions actually for our round of discussions, and we would like first give all the inputs and then come to the questions if that's okay. So I would now ask Jakub Nugraha to share his insights from Indonesia. I understand that Jakub hasn't been part of the group before, but now he apparently joined. Jakub, are you there?
Yes, Alexander. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear your voice.
Okay, thank God. I've just joined just a couple of minutes ago. Okay. What I will share in this session is more on the practical side because I'm from the insurance companies. Let's move to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. First, I would like just to raise the idea that in fact, the farmers are actually the real hero in our lives, but they suffer from many disasters. I just want to bring up two things. The first is harvest failure because of pest disease and also natural disaster, and the impact of this high potential of harvest failure. If insurance company wants to provide insurance coverage, of course, the loss ratio is very high, and it will impact with a very high insurance premium. and and I think it is also happen in most of the countries that farmers are not able to pay for this very high insurance premium. So that's why the government try to take the burden. Let's say government provide, let's say, 75 until 100% insurance subsidy. And the other things, what we saw on the field is even though the farmer have a good harvest, but when the harvest is ample and everywhere, so the price goes down. So I think it is not fair for the farmers. So that's why there should be some ways for insurance company to help those farmers. So nobody wants to become a farmer in Indonesia. I think become a farmer is the last choice if they don't have any other jobs. So the last choice, the last resort is become a farmer. But I think the main point from insurance point of view, if you have a bad risk, so I think it is this DR disaster risk should be reduced for insurance company to have a moderate until a good risk. So let's move to next slide. So what is the meaning of DRR for ACA? We have done this since 2015, meaning we've done it for the last 6 years. And for insurance companies, our KPI is if we do DRR, we hope that we can manage the claim ratio less than 50% within at least 3 planting seasons. And not only for insurance company, DRR will have a benefit for farmers. Why? It will be increase in profit. I think at least farmers need to have 2 times the net profit before they apply DRR. If they have enough money, so there will be no problem. There will be no issue for the farmers to pay their own insurance premium without government subsidy. So if the farmers have the money, they are more than happy to pay insurance premium, I think. But that is my personal view. So, next slide, please. In order to manage the claim ratio, there are a few things that DRR activities can be done. First, for the agronomists and also for the farmers, and of course, good agriculture practice should be applied. What I've listed down here is only based on what we have done, including also the local wisdom. Let's say if you want to set up, let's say organic rice planting, you can use owls. Owls is a kind of birds that overcome the mice population. You can also use the wildflowers to avoid the insect. Farmers, of course, they have to trust and obey the agronomists in applying this GAP. and they can also set up a farmers organization. Whilst from insurance side, I think what we have experienced is what we do is we try to set the obedience of the farmers to follow GAP in the policy wording. If the farmer do not want to follow the instruction from the agronomist, then we will not be able, we will reject the claim. So we force the farmers to follow GAP, because most of the farmers in Indonesia, I think they just do the planting based on their feelings and also their habits. That's back, I think, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, which is not appropriate for the current condition. So the next slide, please. Okay, in terms of how to increase the profit of the farmers still need to do DRR. It is not good agriculture practice, but good handling practice. Because after they have a very good yield, sometimes they have a very bad harvest handling. So that's why I think the shortage was quite high, and also the quality of the harvest is quite low and did not match with the off-takers want. And insurance company, of course, we try to also include it in our policy wording that farmers need to follow or need to implement a good handling practice to help them to maintain the high quality of the grain or the risk or harvest, so they can fulfill the needs of the off-taker and they can have a good price. Next slide, please. In these slides, I would like to share our experiences for corn. In 2015, there was an issue that there will be an El Nino or a very bad drought. So all the farmers are obey to implement good agricultural practice in terms of using how to use the pesticide, herbicides, and other things. But in terms of the planting date, they said that one group said that I don't want to follow your advice, because based on what we have done for many years, late of December is the time for us to plant the seed. They don't want to follow, and we have about 1,200 corn hectares, and this small group farmers, farmers group, they didn't obey, and finally they suffer. Why? Because all the seeds failed to grow because of this drought. They're also really surprised that, and they told me that, hey, I've never experienced like this drought before, and the effect of this disobedience, even though it is only 20 hectares to disobey, but the loss ratio is almost 200% for insurance company. But in general, after they follow GAP, the other farmers in general, I think they can increase their productivity from 6 tons per hectare until 7 tons. So at the next planting season, based on our previous experience on disobedience farmers, we put this term in our policy wording that if they disobey, so we will not pay the claim. And at the end of this second planting season, no one proposed to claim because they obey, the advice from the agronomist. Next slide, please. And I think this is the last slide, my last slide. And we also have other experience. This is for rice. We are using weather index insurance based on the rainfall, and the actuary calculate rainfall prediction based on the 30 years data, and all the farmers obey GAP because we insist them to apply good agricultural practice. They use drought resistant seeds, and also they also have extra expensive for extra watering when there's a dry season. And in fact, since this is based on rainfall index, so we try to collect what is the actual millimeter rainfall. And in fact, we find out that all the farmers are eligible to the payout. All the farmers, we have of about perhaps 70 until 90 farmers. All of them are have the payout. But when we came to see them, okay, when we delivered the check, we found out that all the farmers have already joined and they are happy. Why? Because in fact, they do not suffer from harvest failure. Moreover, their net profit is double, 198% net profit compared to last planting season. So this is really surprised us. We believe that if there's no DRR applied, perhaps the farmers get a very small profit. But in fact, after we find out why this phenomenon happened, we found out that our actuary, they did not put DRR into their consideration, and suppose they have to reduce the threshold to reduce the claim ratio. It doesn't mean that we don't want to pay the claim. It is okay for insurance company to pay the claim, but we have to include DRR as like, let's say, just like a discount factor of in insurance. So in conclusion, if we are doing agriculture insurance, we know it is a bad risk, but if we can include this as a risk reduction, I think the bad risk could be managed into moderate or good risk. And in my presentation in the previous slides, we can do it since we apply our integrated risk management scheme, meaning that everybody has to do their own risk mitigation, like the agronomist, like insurance company, pesticide company, perhaps fertilizer company, the farmers. Everybody has in that ecosystem should done their own risk mitigation. So we have two choices. First, if we can manage the risk, manage the claim, first we can reduce the premium, or if you don't want to reduce the premium, we can provide them also wider coverage. So in our scheme, we can provide, not only weather, but also we can also provide all types of pests and disease. I think this is my last slide, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, thank you.
Okay, Jakub, thank you so much for this very interesting real life case of how disaster risk reduction can actually make sense, not only farmers in general and make them happy, but also make insurance a more feasible construct for all the sides, insurance companies as well as farmers, with all the with the effect of the reduction in the premium. So this is a great case. Thank you so much for sharing this with us and your experiences. Before we go into discussions on that, I would like to ask Mr. Ju to step up and present his insights from Vietnam.
Sẽ đến lượt anh Điều sẽ chia sẻ cái mô hình ở Việt Nam. Nói chưa? Hello, yeah.
Hello.
Hello everybody. Trong cái khuôn khổ của cuộc hội thảo này thì dưới giác độ của doanh nghiệp bảo hiểm thì chúng tôi muốn chia sẻ về cái bảo hiểm nông nghiệp cây lúa theo chỉ số năng suất ở Việt Nam. In this talking, I would like to talk about agriculture insurance, rice insurance based on the productivity in Vietnam. Và đây là cái loại hình bảo hiểm theo chỉ số năng suất. Thì tôi giới thiệu cái nội dung rất là tóm tắt. And for the rice insurance based on the productivity, I will be very briefly. Cái thời hạn bảo hiểm là 1 năm. For the term it will be 1 year. Năng suất bảo hiểm là bằng 90% năng suất bình quân 3 năm trước năm bảo hiểm. Productivity will be calculated for 90% average for the 3 cumulative year before the insurance. Và cái rủi ro bảo hiểm thì có thiên tai, gồm có 19 loại thiên tai phổ biến ở Việt Nam. For coverage is cover for disaster. 19 type of disaster regularly happen in Vietnam.
Và bệnh và dịch bệnh thì có 8 loại dịch bệnh.
And 8 type of disease.
Và cái giám định thì chúng tôi dựa vào cái năng suất dựa trên công nghệ viễn thám, công nghệ RI.
For the loss infection, we're basing on the RISE technology.
Và trong quá trình triển khai thì chúng tôi thấy nó có một số cái thuận lợi. Nhất đây
during the program, we see some advantages.
Đây là một chủ trương lớn của nhà nước và được sự quan tâm của chính phủ.
In Vietnam, it is a major undertaking from the government and with the support from a lot of relevant agencies.
Có sự vào cuộc của các chính quyền địa phương và các cái doanh nghiệp bảo hiểm.
And with the relevant agency inside and also for the insurance companies. Next slide.
Về cái khó khăn ấy thì nó cũng giống như các cái hình bảo hiểm nông nghiệp. Đây là một cái dịch vụ rất khó để triển khai xuống bà con nông dân.
With the challenges that for the agriculture insurance is very difficult to roll out to farmers.
Về cái tâm lý người dân thì cũng chưa quen với cái loại hình bảo hiểm mới này.
In the people mindset, people are not yet aware of the new agriculture insurance.
Quá trình khai thác xuống đến người dân cũng như công tác giám định, quản lý rủi ro, đây là một vấn đề rất là khó trong cái vấn đề.
And challenges in the process of the insurance expand to the farmer and also for the risk assessment. It's also one challenge to the insurance company.
Việc ứng dụng công nghệ trong việc xác định năng suất bảo hiểm cũng như là năng suất thực tế cũng đang là một vấn đề cần được đầu tư nhiều hơn.
The application of the remote sensing technology to determine the productivity is still as a shortcoming and need more investment.
Ví dụ như là về độ chính xác của số liệu, về tính pháp lý, rồi là các cái thuật toán để tính toán ra được cái năng suất thực tế sát với tình hình thực tế của cái năng suất thực thu hoạch.
For example, the accuracy of data and legality application of the algorithms to meet the real situation of the field.
Và một vấn đề nữa là cái thu xếp trên cái thị trường tái bảo hiểm nông nghiệp cũng là một vấn đề rất khó khăn.
And also one challenge is the arrangement of the reassurance for the market. Next slide, please.
Và trong quá trình triển khai cái bảo hiểm cây lúa theo chỉ số ở Việt Nam ấy, thì chúng tôi dưới góc độ một doanh nghiệp thì chúng tôi có một số các cái kiến nghị.
During the implementation of the agriculture insurance,
đối với chính
as
phủ
one assurance company, we have some recommendations for Vietnamese context.
Mặc dù là Việt Nam thì cũng đã có ban hành những cái nghị định về cái bảo hiểm nông nghiệp, tuy nhiên là chúng tôi muốn kiến nghị là để duy trì các cái cơ chế chính sách hỗ trợ cho cái bảo hiểm nông nghiệp này, nó có một cái thời gian nhất định để các doanh nghiệp bảo hiểm có cơ sở để triển khai.
Also, the Vietnamese government has decrees and regulations on the agriculture insurance. However, we still need the support from the government to make the agriculture insurance more feasible in Vietnam.
Thứ hai là khuyến khích các cái tổ chức tín dụng, các doanh nghiệp trong lĩnh vực trồng trọt và các cái tổ chức cung ứng vật tư trong sản xuất nông nghiệp để hỗ trợ cho cái chương trình bảo hiểm nông nghiệp.
Second is encourage the credit institutions and businesses working in agriculture sector to support the agriculture insurance program.
Tiếp nữa là mở rộng các cái đối tượng áp dụng và các cái loại hình bảo hiểm chỉ số.
Next is to expand the subject of application and coverage of the degree in agriculture insurance.
Ngoài cái bảo hiểm theo chỉ số năng suất thì cũng nên bảo hiểm theo các cái chỉ số về thời tiết, về lượng mưa, rồi các cái chỉ số về nắng hạn để phục vụ cho đa dạng các cái đối tượng bảo hiểm.
Besides the insurance on the productivity of rice, it can be applied the insurance on the weather situation, the rainfall, or the drought situation, so that it can diversify the products of agriculture insurance.
Và tiếp theo nữa là xây dựng ứng dụng các cái quy trình tiêu chuẩn trong cái sản xuất nông nghiệp, quy chuẩn hóa các cái quy trình sản xuất nông nghiệp để có thể là hỗ trợ cho các doanh nghiệp bảo hiểm triển khai cái bảo hiểm nông nghiệp thuận lợi hơn.
Next is the standardize the data and information of the agriculture production so that it can be easy to monitor from the insurance company for agriculture activity.
Hai nữa là ở Việt Nam thì chúng tôi chưa có cái ứng dụng cái bảo hiểm vi mô trong nông nghiệp, thì chúng tôi nghĩ rằng là chính phủ cũng nên có cái nghiên cứu về cái bảo hiểm vi mô trong cái bảo hiểm nông nghiệp, thì có thể là hỗ trợ người dân tiếp cận tốt với cái dịch vụ bảo hiểm nông nghiệp.
In Vietnam, there's not yet the micro insurance in agriculture insurance. So we hope that the Vietnamese government and as a agency can support with the micro insurance to help people access more with this type of agriculture insurance. Next slide.
Tiếp nữa là áp dụng các cái giải pháp giảm nhẹ rủi ro trong cái việc mà hỗ trợ trong việc định giá các cái sản phẩm nông nghiệp.
Applying the risk assessment and support with the agriculture activity.
Ví dụ như là ứng dụng công nghệ viễn thám trong việc giám định tổn thất.
Such as applying technology in loss assessment, such as rice technology.
Và xây dựng các cái hệ thống giám sát các quy trình kỹ thuật, tập huấn hướng dẫn cho người nông dân để ứng dụng các cái công nghệ tiên tiến trong việc để đẩy mạnh được có thể các doanh nghiệp bảo hiểm có thể tiếp cận tốt hơn cho cái lĩnh vực, cho các cái đối tượng bảo hiểm.
Develop and monitor system in technical process, training, guiding to farmer to participate in agriculture insurance so that insurance company can get involved and support more.
Một vấn đề nữa là nâng cao cái năng lực cho cái cán bộ trong các cái doanh nghiệp bảo hiểm, để các cơ quan chức năng của các chính quyền địa phương thì để tiếp cận để cho bà con nông dân dễ tiếp cận hơn với cái chương trình bảo hiểm nông nghiệp.
One issue is the capacity building for officer in insurance company and the relevant authority that they can help to support the implementation of the state insurance.
Và thứ hai nữa là nhà nước nên đầu tư các cái cơ sở hạ tầng trong cái lĩnh vực nông nghiệp, thì như hệ thống tưới tiêu, rồi là các cái hệ thống tưới tiêu về vấn đề thủy lợi, rồi là phương tiện giao thông, thì đến xuống các cái đồng ruộng thì sẽ làm cho cái việc mà tiếp cận với
the government invest in infrastructures on agriculture production such as irrigation or drainage system. It will help farmers a lot in their agriculture activity.
Và trên đây là một số những nội dung mà trong cái chương trình bảo hiểm nông nghiệp theo chỉ số ở Việt Nam. Rất mong sự tham gia, cảm ơn các đồng chí đã tham gia cái chương trình thảo luận này, và chúng tôi sẵn sàng có những cái trả lời những cái thắc mắc vướng mắc trong cái việc mà triển khai bảo hiểm nông nghiệp theo cái chỉ số, và cũng muốn là được chia sẻ và học tập kinh nghiệm.
That is some key point for the context and agriculture insurance in Vietnam as an insurance company that I would like to share in this afternoon, and would like to hear your feedbacks and Q&As during the next section, so that for the agriculture insurance can be applied more here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much also for the contribution from Vietnam. That was very interesting. I think we have a very interesting portfolio of presentations. We have kind of the scientific evidence why disaster risk reduction really helps. Then we have the really, I mean, by now a long time experience from Indonesia. That's fantastic, where we where we see what can change with introducing disaster risk reduction measures in the agricultural sector and combining it with insurance. And then we have the Vietnam case, where things are a bit more fresh, and things are a bit more in a startup phase, where you also see, I think, maybe a different relationship between the public authorities and the private sector. I would like now to start our Q&A session and take up the first questions that I see in the comments. Let me maybe combine questions I have in my mind with the question that Antonis raised. And this first question would go then to Jakub. What were actually the challenges for you when you started combining disaster risk reduction and insurance and making it actually an integral part? Because you did a very strong step. No, you said we don't pay claims if you don't do disaster risk reduction. And Antonis raised the question, what was the support from the public agencies, if there was any, and what was missing in that regard? So Jakub, the first question would go to you.
Yes, I think this is also what we have experienced during our first and also second planting season. Should there be any claims that we are not able to pay, so we have a discussion with the farmers. What are the results? What were the reasons? And of course, from the beginning, we have to sit down all together with the farmers, with the head of the farmers group. So there's no point if we don't want to pay the claim, as simple as that. And we try to treat it under agriculture micro insurance. So we try to make it very simple. Yeah, just straight to the point. So the role of this organization just to, as a facilitator, just to explain, just to listen to both parties and try to explain to become a bridge between parties that have different options.
Okay, thank you, Jakub, so much for giving that that first feedback. I would like to also give a first question to Mr. Now that you have seen the quite convincing case that Jakub presented for Indonesia, where you really made disaster risk reduction a condition to actually have insurance claims, is this something you could also see possible in the case of Vietnam?
Là các cái hoạt động về kết hợp giữa phòng ngừa giảm nhẹ thiên tai và cái bảo hiểm, thì anh có thể chia sẻ cái kinh nghiệm của anh trong cái việc kết hợp hai cái hoạt động này trong cái bối cảnh Việt Nam.
Có thể nói là ở Việt Nam ấy thì cái rủi ro thiên tai nó rất là nhiều. Thế thì ngoài các cái cơ chế về phòng ngừa thiên tai như là giảm nhẹ thiên tai rồi là thực hiện các cái chính sách mùa vụ, thì cái công tác bảo hiểm đó là một cái cơ chế tài chính rất hữu hiệu để giúp bà con nông dân có thể khắc phục được cái rủi ro thiên tai. Và thực tế thì với những thời gian vừa qua thì các doanh nghiệp bảo hiểm, mặc dù ở Việt Nam làm bảo hiểm nông nghiệp chưa nhiều, nhưng cũng đã hỗ trợ bà con nông dân khi mà xảy ra các cái rủi ro thiên tai, dịch bệnh rất là hiệu quả.
You know that in Vietnamese context, the disaster happen a lot, and I see that the disaster risk reduction, together with the policy to support the calendar of the farmer, it will be very useful for the agriculture insurance to reduce the impacts of disaster. In the recent year, insurance companies, even though there's not yet much agriculture insurance happen, however, it have provided a lot of benefit to farmer when disaster happen.
Great. Thank you so much for that feedback. I would now open in the last minutes. I would kind of open up the round. Tan-A, you raised your hand. Do you want to spell out your question or comment?
Yes. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. I would like to have a question to Indonesia market. As Mr. Dio presentation in Vietnam, we found that the reinsurance market for the agriculture is limited, and sometimes seems the local insurance company face difficulties in resourcing the reinsurance market. So I would like to hear the experience from Indonesia market. I learned that Indonesia rice insurance or agricultural insurance have no reinsurance. They share in local through the pool or co-insurance. Is it correct or not? And if so, what is the sustainable for the agricultural scheme? Because if only co-insurance in locally, can we make a proper good enough product to offer to the farmer or not? That is the first question. The second question is the micro insurance integrate in the agriculture. What is the difference between currently product and the micro insurance? We can help easier for the farmer to reduce and mitigate the disaster risks. And if the government integrate the insurance mechanism into the disaster risk reduction or not? Thank you.
Thank you. Now,
can I? Yeah.
Yeah, Jakob,
Yes,
please
sir.
go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the very interesting question. The number one is regarding the reinsurance market. You are correct that the government have provided rice insurance harvest failure, and it covers, I think, almost 1 million hectares. And for the time being, if I'm not mistaken, this scheme was handled by state-owned insurance companies, and there's only one big insurance company in Indonesia. And for the time being, they just still handle it by, I think not co-insurance because this program was mandated by under the law. So what we understand, all private sectors are not invited, are not involved in this project. So all the reinsurance side was handled by this state-owned insurance company. But I believe they also share this with reinsurance. It's only a few insurance company in Indonesia who really wants to develop this market. I think agriculture insurance market, because we're still afraid of the high possibility of harvest failure, because most of insurance company, they have not applied, or they have no idea on would that be possible for them to reduce the claim or to reduce the possibility of the claim. How is it possible for insurance company to improve the perils, or to do something to reduce the possibility of claim. But what we have done, I think, assuming that we have done it under our pilot project based on our experience for the last 5 years, in fact, we can do it, and it will relate also with your second question. And with this experience, even though we have only in total, I think perhaps only 2,000 hectares. For us, it is very small. But whenever we go to the government officers, either to Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Agriculture, they all agree that what we have done is really good, because we are not only just to provide insurance, but we can do something to increase the knowledge of the farmers, to increase their productivity, and not only that, but we can prove it to the government that by using these good handling practices also, the net profit of the farmers can be increased also. So whilst we consider that most of our target market is smallholder farmers, and which reflects that they have no higher education. In some areas, perhaps in Indonesia, they cannot speak in the national language fluently. So there's no other choice for us aside of using micro-insurance concept, because for Indonesia, the micro-insurance concepts is it should be very simple language, very easy to understand, and also you are not allowed to provide for more than 3 pieces of paper. So it is very limited. So you have to make it very short, very straight to the point. Yeah, that's it. I think so. That's why we try to apply this micro insurance concept. So whenever we approach the regulators, they also support us. And for the last 5 years, we have already tested this policy wording to the market. We give them, we let them to read the whole wordings, and they understand it. I think those are the things that we need to apply when we approach the farmers. But if we have, let's say, rich farmers, high educated farmers, the young generation who apply, the technology, digital farming system, and other things, perhaps you don't have to use this micro insurance concept. But for us, I think in Indonesia, yeah, it's better for us to start from a very simple one. Then, if you get the basic, then you can apply, and you can revise into more sophisticated wordings.
Okay, Jakob, thank you so much for your insight and very clear feedback. I hope that served the purpose. We are unfortunately now at the end of our session. Personally, I feel like talking about those things all day long with you, because it's really at my core interest, and so important for the farming community that we find solutions in the future. I think summarizing a bit today is we clearly saw the benefit that disaster risk reduction measures can have for the farming community. So Stefan made it very clear what is the potential benefit of applying better practices. But then we also saw that it's actually ideal to combine the practices with how you manage your residual risks and how you could potentially transfer that to other institutions. So, and I think we saw those great examples of how you can combine this and how this can make sense for all the parties involved. Jakob, you just raised your hand.
No, yes. No.
Okay. No, because we are already a little bit over time, and so for the time being, I just want to thank our presenters so much for sharing their insights. I also want to thank the audience, of course, for tuning in today and sharing their questions. So thank you very much again. So this session is now over, and I think next is the fourth session in about now 10 minutes time. So I'm looking forward to see you again in the next session. Here is a last slide, maybe on the evaluation. So if you want to give thumbs up for our presenters, just check the evaluation and give them a good rating. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much also, Mr. Ahmad, for the welcome. And yeah, enjoy the next session.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
See you in the next session.
See you in the next